what can you actually manufacture and automate in that process, right? Because we cannot compete head to head with cheap labor. It's just not going to happen. These product marketplaces tend to start with that intermediary, that third-party seller, that distributor. As they get more demand, they want to basically cut the intermediary out and go directly to the manufacturer. 30% of the stuff being sold on Amazon is coming basically directly from a Chinese manufacturer. They've got a pretty big head start. This trend around manufacturing, ultimately, I do think that the United States, we are going to see a resurgence of manufacturing, and we have to see it. COVID, I think, has been, a nice kick in the where for us to really focus once again on manufacturing. I think we're going to start to see manufacturing, automation, and new technologies really pick up in the medical field. We are going to need, subsidies will help, obviously. The manufacturing sector needs all the help it can get with American manufacturing. A lot of the jobs around that have low cost labor, we have not remained competitive in for a variety of reasons, right? China has really been the one to benefit from that. They have, over 1 billion people. And if you need cheap labor, they got that. We would be remiss to overgeneralize Chinese manufacturing as only being, cheap labor, albeit a lot of it is cheap labor, and will remain to be cheap labor as their competitive advantage. But as you get those reps and those cycles, China, going back a few decades now, starting with cheap labor. So what are the more commoditized manufacturing things that you can do? And then you can, start to innovate. And you can start to introduce technology to the manufacturing process, right? Foxconn, they got millions of people making iPhones, but it's not just the fact that they got millions of people as to why they are pretty much one of the only, if not the only manufacturer that can do what they do at the scale that they do it for Apple. There are reports that like Foxconn factories that they promised to make in the United States are empty. And, a lot of these Chinese manufacturers that have promised to invest in the US and bring jobs here. Actually, a lot of that hasn't come to fruition. That is the rumor. This has been the trajectory of Chinese manufacturing over the years, right? Cheap labor. Now, we are seeing them invest successfully in high-tech manufacturing. If we see what they're doing militarily or with the dragnet of, the Great Firewall, their Huawei, all the different things technologically that they are investing in, right? So you can't just regard them as a cheap labor manufacturing competitor, but they certainly do have that in their arsenal and have now been making aggressive investments into factory and manufacturing automation. Let's talk Amazon. Let's talk Alibaba. If you look farther out, right, and you look at Amazon's trajectory. A lot of these marketplaces, they start out catering. Their supply comes from third-party sellers. Those could be boutique retailers. Those could be, individuals just kind of playing kind of product pricing arbitrage. There still are a bunch of sellers on Amazon that are buying off of Alibaba. So they're sourcing stuff from Chinese factories, buying it off of Alibaba, and then reselling it on Amazon. That theme is why you've seen, and we've covered on the show many times, upward trend of pre-COVID, Amazon having almost 49% of their top 10,000 sellers were actually Chinese manufacturers. That's why you've seen Wish, which just IPO'd, like 97% of their sellers are Chinese manufacturers, right? So point here is these product marketplaces tend to start with that intermediary, that third-party seller, that distributor. And then as they get more demand, they want to basically cut the intermediary out and go directly to the manufacturer, right? That's a natural progression of a lot of these product marketplaces. So as marketplaces go directly to the manufacturer, and as you see automation, manufacturing automation investments ramp up, there will be tipping point where you say, okay, where can the manufacturing and can the technology and localized manufacturing be competitive as it relates to Amazon marketplaces just going directly to Chinese manufacturers? The bad news is that pre-COVID, as I've mentioned, it was almost 50% of the top 10,000 sellers on Amazon Marketplace, which is now probably close to 60, if not more, 60% of the stuff being sold on Amazon. Right? So think about that. If 60% of the stuff on Amazon, if half of that, so if 30% of the stuff being sold on Amazon is coming basically directly from a Chinese manufacturer, they've got a pretty big head start, right? So there are two main buckets as you think about manufacturing and how to break it down. So one bucket is electrical and electronic manufacturing, right? Anything with chips, with electronics in it. That is a whole other ball game when it comes to manufacturing, right? The other bucket is basically everything else. So that could be textiles, which is a fancy word for clothes. That could be medical device products, right? So yes, there are connected medical devices that have electronics in them, right? Like ventilators. But there are a whole slew of things classified as a medical device. It could be an implant, for your dentist and your tooth. It could be, the surgeon's tools. It could be you get a hip, you get a knee. All of these things are considered medical devices. Could be PPE, the protective equipment. Because of the pandemic here, Chinese manufacturing, particularly in the medical supply space, has seen a huge boon. Chinese manufacturers and the Chinese government were cutting deals left and right with U.S. governors who were in a bind and just needed supplies ASAP. So here's a good little breakdown here. These two buckets, right? Electronics on the right side, you can see all the different things that could kind of go into here. Medical device, connected medical devices could go into here. And then on the left side here, you got, just about everything else. So when we look at automation, so what can you actually manufacture and automate in that process, right? Because we cannot compete head to head with cheap labor. It's just not going to happen. And even the Italians, when they import the labor, they still manage to get the stiff end of the deal. So these are some processes that you're seeing robots and software start to automate these tasks, right? And you can kind of see how they break down in different parts of the manufacturing workflow between kind of the microelectronics work here and kind of everything else on the left side, right? A really cool company is called Xometry. And this is a marketplace company. And you say, okay, how can marketplaces, how can platforms help manufacturing? You think about a lot of these robotics, ways to automate manufacturing. A lot of them are not platform plays, right? They are highly technical. You need very skilled engineers. You got a lot of really smart people to make that happen. But it's not really a platform model, or we're still a little bit of a ways away from seeing how the platform model could come in. I think one natural application of it would be development platforms, right? Where you have different ones of these robotic startups that have an operating system, essentially, right? And you say, hey, here's the robot, has these different capabilities. I've got an operating system on it. Now you need to build software on top of this to automate the manufacturing process and the workflow, right? And you could have a bunch of different software tools integrate into that. You could have a community of people that are kind of like what you saw with I think it's called Shapeways, MakerBot. MakerBot, the 3D printer. The MakerBot, the 3D printer. They launched this thing called Shapeways, and Shapeways is their marketplace to post different things that the machine can make, right? Hey, download this file. If you got the Shapeways machine, or if you got the MakerBot machine, bam, download this file from the Shapeways marketplace, and now your 3D printer can go make this object or this tool, right? Xometry is a little bit different. So this company, custom manufacturing on demand with over 5,000 suppliers, our network has the capacity you need for prototyping and production, right? 3D printing, injection mold. You can see all the different kinds of jobs and manufacturing protocols that their over 5,000 suppliers can fulfill for you, right? So they have a network of these different small business manufacturers that have these machines that are hooked into the Xometry ecosystem. You need a tool made quickly. If you need, you're prototyping some tools, right? You can kind of have these fast turnaround, customized products cranked out for you, kind of small batch jobs, as opposed to, right? That's the other kind of part about competing on manufacturing, right? There's the kind of tooling and prototyping and planning phase, right? And then there's the, okay, let's ramp manufacturing at scale. Those are also two very different workflows. This is more so focused on the former rather than the latter. Whereas, typically a lot of kind of startups that you talk about for robotic automated manufacturing are focusing on, okay, how am I going to scale manufacturing and crank out thousands and thousands of units every day? And I've got these robots that can automate all that and et cetera, et cetera. So this is, this company is focusing a little bit differently on this, but it's a marketplace. It's in the manufacturing spectrum. They've raised about $200 million, founded out of Maryland. Very cool company. They just raised another $75 million in September of last year, 2020. You are seeing in certain areas, marketplace businesses get into manufacturing. I think another area, and I've spoken about on the show, that we can see how marketplaces and platforms can help affect change when it comes to bringing manufacturing back to America is simply this: on the demand side, right? So there's the part about this competing on price and quality. And as China ramps bottom up, where they have the more commoditized, they started with the cheap labor. I'm talking decades here. I'm overgeneralizing, right? How can they build technology to, to penetrate upstream? The U.S. has basically lost the downstream stuff, and they're coming more from the upstream to the downstream. How can we bring sophisticated machinery and software and robots to make us, the U.S., cost effective and competitive with the Chinese approach? It's no small feat. So we need every little bit of help that we can get, and we can't solely rely on the government to do it for us, because we've seen just their ineptitude on a bipartisan basis for decades. So can't hope they're going to get this, even though you now might have both sides of government saying, yes, we need to bring back, American manufacturing. Great. How do you do that and execute? Whole other story. So how can we, private enterprise, try to affect change in this regard? On the demand side of this, right? If Amazon is saying, hey, 30% of the stuff you buy on Amazon is coming from a Chinese factory. If consumers start to say, you know what, Amazon, that's actually not cool. I would like to know who these sellers are. I would like to know which one of these sellers are based in China, or just in, outsourced manufacturing. If you go the other way, I would like to know which one of these sellers or which one of these manufacturers are making their stuff in America. And there are some small but growing marketplaces with this theme. Here is one of them. MadeInAmerica.co, not .com. See it here. And so shop thousands of Made in America products. This is the other place where marketplaces and platforms can can help bring this back is on the demand side. How can you get consumers to be aware, to vote with their dollars, to say, yes, I want to prioritize buying products from American businesses. But, these startups are small. They don't have a lot of capital, don't have huge traction. They have some traction. This company was featured at, one of the White House summits on bringing manufacturing back to America. This was all pre-COVID. But still, they need a lot more capital. They need a lot more scale. But I think these are some of the swim lanes, right? How can we leverage marketplaces to help better connect to small mom and pop manufacturers, whether that's what Xometry is doing, which is more of a B2B play, but still nonetheless a similar model, or on the B2C side, whether it's Amazon. Etsy is a big proponent of this. Obviously, it's homemade craft goods. They kind of inherently have to get most of their stuff from the US, otherwise just model wouldn't work as well. On the B2C side, then you also have Wish.com, right? And then you got Amazon, with basically half of their third-party sellers are straight from Chinese factories, right? And then you got Made in America, madeamerica.co here, right? And there's a few other startup marketplaces that are focusing on this. So there's kind of the demand side. How can marketplaces help leverage demand and bring demand to American manufacturers? That's part of it. Then the other part, which is a much longer term play, much more nuanced, very capital intensive, and I'll be going deeper into that in coming episodes, which is more on the development platform play. That one's a little bit farther out in terms of platform models, really, I think having a huge impact on the manufacturing. I think some of where we, the platform community, can affect change a little bit sooner is on the more the product marketplace side, the kind of channeling demand to American manufacturers as opposed to, let's say, Chinese manufacturers. Nothing wrong with that. Hi, this is Alex from Winner Take All. Thanks for joining us. Hope you enjoyed the content. Feel free to leave a comment, ask us questions, and definitely make sure to join us on our next live stream.